Namaste. Welcome to ITV Gold. Today is my first show that has to be focused on kids because they say children are the future citizens of the world. Why is vaping so cool? Or say, why is vaping not so cool? There is a curiosity amongst teens these days when they feel vaping is cool. And for me, the message has to go out to the people at large that vaping is not so cool and vaping definitely is very dangerous to the teens and for their health, for their mental being, for their overall existence. It is going to cause a major trouble. Let me introduce to our esteemed panelists tonight who would educate you, inform you, empower you well. Well, my first panelist is Mr. Yogesh Pandey, who is a parent volunteer and a community leader who has devoted his selfless hours towards the cause of this substance abuse and vaping issues in his local community. Thank you so much, Mr. Pandey, for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for inviting me for the show. Thank you.
And I have Dr. Vasudev Makhija, a psychiatrist in New Jersey who is a distinguished life fellow of the American Psychiatric Association and past president of New Jersey Psychiatric Association. He is the founder and president of Samheen, South Asian Mental Initiative and Network, a non-profit organization that for the past about 8 years has been addressing the mental health needs of the South Asians in the US. Samheen conducts regular workshops and mental health screenings in the community and has a helpline which people can call if they are struggling or just have a question. Samheen offers 4 free support groups and has an online directory of South Asian mental health providers. Well, Dr. Makhija, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we are looking forward to have a lot of good information from you tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And now, let's go one step at a time. I said, why is vaping not so cool? But you must be wondering, what does vaping mean? And I'll go straight to Mr. Yogesh Pandey. Yogeshji, please explain what does vaping mean exactly, and then we'll go about why it's not cool.
Sure. Vaping, जैसे लोग cigarette पीते हैं, so vaping we call it an e-cigarette. I mean, you can light those cigarettes with different chemicals inside it with different flavors, and you inhale it, just like a regular cigarette. But it is very difficult to figure out, because there are different flavors and all. It's very difficult for parents to figure out, what they are doing. Mm-hmm. And it's a device, which you can charge it with your, simple, laptop or,
Oh, it's a USB support charge?
You have a USB support charges for those very, very cool looking devices. Kids are very curious to try it out. Based on some of the data we have, most of the kids, they try out because of the curiosity. 54% of the cases, that we have seen, kids say that, hey, what, this guy is trying, so we just want to try it out as well. And that gets them into an addiction process. And as of like 2019, we had like close to around 41 million, kids in the country, who are involved into this vaping. And over the last 2 years, since the pandemic started in late 2019, early 2020, there is a significant rise for at least 15–20%. So, I mean, 2022, here we are, with around 60 million, kids involved into this vaping.
So, you see this segment of kids when we speak about, are they preteens, teens or adults?
So, the data that shows, kids are very curious even as low as, from 7 years to 10 years of age.
Oh my goodness.
And then, it is very prominent actually when they go into the middle school. And then when they go into the high school, they move from vaping to, different, say for example, drug abuse like fentanyl. So different data, for different set of, range of kids. But yes, I mean, we can very clearly see that, the kids as early as, at the age of like 7 to 10 years, they are very curious to try it out, what their peers are doing or what their seniors are doing in the schools or in their local communities.
Thank you for that input. Viewers, when we casually speak about a vape, your child might be carrying something at home and you might not even be knowing that it is an e-cigarette used to vape. Vaping is a terminology where you are inhaling vapors through an instrument. where there is no smoke exactly like a cigarette, but there is a different kind of smoke that, of course, these are vapors that come out from this instrument. It's an electronic cigarette, and basically the purpose why e-cigarettes were launched apparently were for the chain smokers, so that they can get rid of chain smoking or cigarettes and get onto something lighter, but they are more dangerous, they are more harmful than the cigarettes themselves when we compare certain factors. I have Dr. Makhija here, and definitely Dr. Makhija, you are leading Samheen, and you must have seen many kids as well who have fallen addicted to different kind of substances. How do you see the beginning of this vaping journey when we speak about? How do you see, where does a kid land when he starts vaping? Do you see that they get into drug addiction also if they start off with vapes, e-cigarettes?
So, I mean, technically people say that vaping is not as dangerous or as smoking, but the devil is in the details. And so how do they land? Curiosity is one.
Right.
And the heavy marketing by these companies, and there's billions of dollars at stake in this business. I think in the US itself is $7 billion business a couple of years ago. I don't know how much it is today. It's probably higher.
It is 18.1 billion as of
Okay, so here we have numbers guy here.
$18.1 billion?
Yeah, so
as of
it's
last
big.
as of 2019.
So they market it in such a way, they make it look so cool. And I mean, there are times I look at this thing, you feel like trying it, and another thing, they're making them smaller and smaller. They're easy to hide. One company came out with this hoodie in which the hood has a string to which the e-cigarette is attached.
Oh
so the kid is just putting it in the mouth and nobody knows that he's vaping.
My goodness, that easy access, that's how they're designing it specifically?
So concealable. And then culturally, it's more of a big social problem, and there's a lot of peer pressure. Oh, I want to try because other kids are trying it, it's cool. Sometimes sibling has tried, so I want to try it too.
How do you see about the gender specifics? Is this the males who go more into vaping, or girls also get into it?
It's equal.
It's equal?
Yes.
My
It's equal.
goodness.
And once they reported that the boys and girls are equal proportion.
That's very strange. I mean, okay, of course, there is gender equality, so of course why vapes would go behind. Now, the another point is, of course, they come in a fashioned form. They look like some fancy lipsticks cases or something else like that. These are available easily to kids. Although, what are the parameters when we speak about law and enforcement? Mr. Pandey, you have worked with the law enforcement agencies also. Is it legal for a kid to go and buy a vape?
It is not legal. So the data that we have, it suggests that most of the kids who get their hands onto these vaping products, either they're getting into the school through their peers, and for example, if there is a senior in the school, right, they are probably of the legal age, or they have their own peers, right, who are out of the school. So they are getting their hands onto those products from their seniors. They are bringing it probably, to the school likely, and giving it to their juniors, because they cannot go and buy in the open market. Because
so you mean to say that the vapes, these e-cigarettes are easily available in the school setting, in the community setting itself?
It is very easily available. I mean, I see kids getting it from God knows where they are getting, but I'm pretty sure they cannot go into any shop.
So what is the affordability? I mean, it's a curious question, because kids definitely reach out to their parents. Hey mom, give me $10, I have to buy pizza, food, this and that. How much does one e-cigarette cost?
It ranges anywhere between $15 to $25, $30.
Wow.
Or goes up to like $50 even sometimes.
Really?
But kids are actually smart, there are kids, who pool up the money. Say you bring in $5, and they pool in like $20. I mean, it's very easy to transact money using Venmo, right? There is no no record.
Right.
So one cigarette, one e-cigarette they're going to buy, probably 4 or 5 kids are going to use it.
They share it?
They'll share it, and sharing is again a big issue. And it is very important for parents to know that one pack of cigarette has, say, for example, 20 cigarettes, but one joule pod, single joule pod, has close to, it is equivalent to 44 cigarettes.
Oh my God, one joule pod. You're saying one e-cigarette is equal to 44 cigarettes?
44 cigarettes. And then we have a fixed pod. One fixed pod, it is equivalent to close to 75 cigarettes.
So what do you mean by one joule pod and a fixed pod? Like
there's a different categories of pods actually. There's a joule pod, there's a one fixed pod, and then we have something called a Suron pod. Suron pod has close to 90 cigarettes, equivalent to 90 cigarettes, which cost like around maybe in the higher range, $40–50.
So that the same joule will last for how long?
90 cigarettes, if 5 people are smoking, probably it will run for maybe say 3 days, 5 days, depending upon, how many puffs they are taking.
And they would have already consumed, like they would have already smoked 40 cigarettes, this means?
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the reasons, over the last 3 years, after the pandemic began, the COVID-19, the disease, the lung causing disease has been, up by almost like 30–40%. This is one of the reasons. So they are saying, your kids will probably, the chances of your kid dying is 3 times more than using like, products like these e-cigarettes or fentanyl compared to COVID-19.
Oh my God. Hard fact. E-cigarettes. You might have said, oh, my son doesn't smoke cigarettes. He just uses sometimes e-cigarettes. He's going to college. Yeah, he's going to go join the job. And you're a little casual there. But there is a warning sign. A permanent damage to their lungs. And not just that. Dr. Makhija, I have a question from you. What kind of kick these kids, these teenagers and adults get when they vape, when they consume these, e-cigarettes?
So there is that initial chemical kick. You get a high. If you have ever smoked, I used to smoke 50 years ago, and if I took a little deep puff, I would get a really high. I would even get dizzy. So they'll look for a high, and the e-cigarettes could be just flavoring liquids inside, or there could be nicotine, which is the same chemical as in tobacco, cigarettes, or marijuana. Or it's also called cannabis.
Oh, they can come filled with marijuana also?
So you can use the same e-cigarette for smoking nicotine or marijuana.
Oh my God.
So depending on what you are using, so if both of them cause high, you can get giggly if you're using marijuana. There are also like social, it's also like a part of a cool culture. They have these parties where they'll say, oh, who can blow the coolest smoke? And they actually have certain tricks which they can play with the devices to create fancy looking smoke rings, and that kind of course draws them into this use even more, because they feel they are in the network.
Wow. My another question is, because you have seen different cases, what is the percentage of these kids falling into substance abuse, a higher level? Say there are 100 kids who are vaping today. How many of them are most probably go into substance abuse, drug abuse as well?
So let me first clarify, you mentioned that I have seen a lot of cases.
Right.
I have not seen cases in my practice. And if you talk to any psychiatrist, they will tell you that there are no patients that come, hey, I have a problem with e-cigarettes.
Oh my God, okay.
So they don't come, it doesn't become an identifiable problem. It becomes more of a social problem.
My goodness.
It comes to attention because they may be caught for various reasons, either legal consequence or a school consequence, or they are caught stealing money and things like that. So the second part of your question is, what does it lead to?
Right.
And one of the things that they marketed initially was that that if you vape, then it will help you quit smoking.
Right.
The conventional cigarette, or that it will decrease your chance of smoking. What they found was, if you have never smoked and you have never done vape, if you start vaping, the chance of you going on to smoking combustible cigarettes or even marijuana is higher.
Wow.
Now, I haven't read anything that would say it goes on to become other drug addictions like heroin or others.
Right.
But those are the two facts that we know, and several studies have shown that they go on to smoke more. And smoking clearly has greater risks in terms of the morbidity it causes, the sicknesses it causes with the lungs, the breathing, the cancer, cardiovascular system. And what they market was, well, this is safer. And that is kind of half-truth. It is safer in the short term because it doesn't have those chemicals of burning tobacco and paper. But we only have the short-term data. We don't know what it's going to do in the long term. We also know that there are other additives in there which, when they are used, can cause sickness. As Yogesh pointed out earlier about lung sicknesses, as of I think February 2020, I think there have been reports of about 3,000 cases of these lung injuries secondary to vaping.
Wow.
And it's called EVALI, and about 68 deaths have been reported.
Goodness.
Now these are not directly related in terms of the cause and effect relationship to nicotine or marijuana, but more due to the toxins in there. One of the ones that they identified in the e-cigarette was the vitamin E acetate, which is like a normal thing that's used in creams, which is safe.
Right.
But when they smoke, it is not safe. It causes this injury to the lungs.
So, thank you for those inputs, Dr. Makhija. Another question is, how does a parent get to know, or what are the checks and controls that, as parents, the concern is, what should we observe in our kids that can convey the child is heading into vaping, e-cigarettes and all basically?
So the commonest way is the mother might find some equipment when she's doing the laundry.
Say supposedly the equipment is not visible. What are the other characters you can see in the child?
They might, in the child itself, you may see some, for example, changes in behavior, mood, irritability, or they might steal money to buy these things, or a drop in grades, or there are reports from school because they might skip school to do the vaping.
Right.
Or they might get into legal trouble.
Okay. I have one more question. I mean, hearsay, and we need to correct it. I heard that if your child is vaping, the child might be spitting a lot. Is this common?
Say that again?
Spit. Sputum out, taking the sputum out, spitting. Is there something to do with the lungs that they spit? Something common, generic, or no?
I am not familiar with the spitting a lot. They might drink less coffee or caffeine.
They might drink less caffeine,
they may have some nosebleeds for some reason.
Okay. All right.
They might drink more water.
Okay, they might drink more water, but less coffee, less tea.
Yeah.
As you speak about. Okay. And you're saying irritability. Are they preferring to stay alone in that condition? What is the generic behavior?
Well, they will try to find ways of sneaking, because basically when they smoke, especially when they smoke nicotine, nicotine is one of the most addictive substances.
Right.
And very hard to quit too. And smoking is the toughest addiction to lick, So if they haven't had their fix, so to say, they can have withdrawal symptoms. Because the thing with this is when you vape and you smoke, the nicotine level rises very quickly, you get high, but it also drops equally quickly. Right. So the high that you got goes away very quickly too. And when it goes away, then you start to get irritable, you start to miss it, your inside says, hey, where is my fix? And then you get restless, you want to find ways of going out there and getting your fix if you're running out of your substance, or just to go out so you can go and smoke, either on the street or in the corner or in the backyard.
And if they are smoking inside their own bedroom with the parents, would the parents get to know?
Well, if sometimes they can get caught if they're vigilant and they have this strong a fruity odor in the house. That
What kind of fruity odor
like
you're
a
specifically
candy,
talking? Candy?
sweet, yeah,
Sweet.
and they
Any
cannot
berry?
quite put finger on it. And if you're smelling that, then you can suspect that, and
Wow.
then you can have a dialogue with your kid.
So basically, for the parents, if there is a fruity flavor smell that's coming into from your child's bathroom or bedroom, or if you want to smell their mouth, if there is a berry smell or a sweet smell, there is definitely a little warning sign there. Mr. Pandey, you have extensively devoted your time there with kids also. What has been your observation? And of course, guide us more on those same.
I mean, just for the sake of argument, right, the normal cigarette has like 7,000 different chemicals, right? When you smoke, you are
Right.
inhaling like 7,000 different chemicals. In e-cigarettes, you know, you have certain things like, you know, benzene, which you find in the car exhaust, like it's called a volatile organic compound. There are heavy metals like, you know, tin, you know, lead. You're all inhaling all those things. You know,
My
it's all
goodness.
cancer-causing chemicals. They're not going to tell you about all these things, you know. There are big companies, you know, like Marlboro, who sell the cigarettes, you know, they're one of the top brand by Philip Morris. They're putting so much of money behind it, you know, hiding a lot of things, you know, which parent has to educate themselves. Then only they can educate their kids.
Right. And another question, Dr. Makhija.
I wanted to
If we-
follow up on that point a little bit, if I may.
Sure, please.
That these chemicals, and it is very true, and some of the more modern e-cigarettes available that can be modified by the teenager. And when you modify, and the way it burns the liquid, that generates more of these chemicals. So we never know. Even
So
cause
how do they modify it?
Well, by changing the resistance on the electronic coil, the electrical coil there, and how the temperature is, the wattage, and then they modify and they raise, and they give you more kick, the higher nicotine level. And when they burn, certain flavors especially can cause some of the toxins, which may not be toxic under normal conditions, but when they heat it up, it becomes toxic and they're inhaled.
My God. And say supposedly a parent gets to know that the child is vaping. What are the corrective measures? How to deal psychologically, you know, with that child? Dr. Makhija, throw some light.
So first I would say is, as a parent, you should face your own fears.
Right.
I think we, especially Indian parents, we go from 0 to 60 like this, you know. And
Right.
once we find a vaping stick, pod, or whatever, or e-cigarette in the kid's position, or we find out or suspect, then our immediate reaction is, oh my God, my kid is going to be a bum. He's going to be a drug addict. Forget about the profession we were dreaming of for him, or
Right.
becoming a
Right.
doctor and lawyer. It's never going to happen. So I think we need to back off from going that far. Okay, and I think you don't talk when you're upset and angry. Talk to your spouse, have a dialogue, do due diligence, do the research, learn about it, and then have a dialogue with the kids. And the dialogue should initially be, the traffic of the dialogue should be from the teenager to the parent.
Right.
You listen, listen, and listen.
As to why he or she started.
Without making any angry comments. Just
Right.
listen.
Right.
You know, and then you try to find out what made them smoke. Is it the curiosity? Is it because it's cool? Are they vaping? What are they putting in vaping? Ask direct questions.
Right.
You know, how often are they doing? What is it
Right.
doing for them? How does it make them feel? What do they do when people ask them at get-togethers to use? So have that dialogue with the kid without losing your cool.
When we speak about, say, a child is vaping e-cigarette, even the kid doesn't know whether there is marijuana inside, whether there is something else. What all can be put into a vape, because they are getting it from somebody who's peddling it, right? So they definitely don't have a certification what is there in their e-cigarette. What could be there? Just a warning sign to the parents, to the kids also, if you're watching this. You might be thinking that you're just having some nicotine kick, but what all can go inside you? Dr. Makhija, just few pointers, because of course we have short time, but I need that from you.
I think what is more important that the kid does not know what's in there. If you ask them,
Right.
most of them they'll say, oh, it's just flavoring liquid. Okay, and they may be right most of the time,
All
but
right.
not.
So flavoring liquid has nothing, or it has nicotine at least?
No, not necessarily.
Nothing.
So the e-cigarettes can have three compositions. One is just the flavoring liquid, and as we said, there are 8,000 different, and some can cause problems
Right.
in terms when they are burnt.
Right.
And the second is nicotine,
Right.
and third is marijuana,
Marijuana
or
can come in
cannabis,
the e-cigarette?
or you can have combinations of these.
The combination. So it could be a flavoring liquid, but there could be marijuana inside it as well, nicotine as well, and can be something else.
Right, and there
It's
may be
upon you.
additives due to the contaminations and sold from the streets to save money. See, marijuana per gram is a lot more expensive than some of the other compounds which they will add to for the bulk.
It is important to understand that all these e-cigarettes, we talk about nicotine, it is not exactly a nicotine, it is a synthetic nicotine.
Synthetic nicotine.
It is a nicotine that is grown up in the lab. It is not even a natural nicotine. So those synthetic nicotine actually is more dangerous, just like the synthetic fentanyl, right?
Right.
It is like a pain medication, like Oxycontin.
Right.
So when we say that the e-cigarettes has nicotine, no, I mean it has a nicotine, but it's not a natural nicotine. It's a synthetic nicotine, which is more dangerous.
Okay, Yogesh is right. There are two types of nicotine. The traditional one that is comes from the tobacco,
Right.
and that is a non-soluble one.
Right.
And the second is the nicotine salts. And the nicotine salts, which have been developed and which are used more often now, they tend to produce a greater amount of nicotine when smoked. So per milliliter, there's greater nicotine that is inhaled compared to even the combustible cigarette.
But there's the good
Interesting.
news.
What's the good news? Tell us.
So the good news is on March 11, 2022, Biden administration has passed a new bill. So if everything goes well, this synthetic nicotine should fall under FDA's Tobacco Regulatory Authority,
Okay.
which has very harsh regulations.
So this will not
So
be
th-
available
so
easily?
there's a big possibility that this whole synthetic nicotine could be banned for good.
Interesting.
So the time is, I mean, probably early next year we'll see, how it goes, because there are cases pending in the court against Jules.
Right.
So if FDA and administration acts against it, they'll be out of business.
I think the problem is these kids are always 2 steps ahead of us.
They're smart.
We as professionals, we find out after the fact. Government finds out after the fact.
But they have tried and tested
Yeah, because they were
beforehand.
blindsided when this whole thing
Right.
skyrocketed in 2019 or 2018,
Right.
when the incidence started going up of this vaping.
Well, thank you, Dr. Makhija. Thank you, Mr. Pandey. See, we have a lot more to talk. And of course, as I promised to my audience also, we have just started off talking about vaping. And of course, vaping somewhere leads to another substance abuse. And I'll come back in another episode where we would again discuss at length what all goes around. Thank you for your time, Dr. Makhija, and
Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much,
Thank you.
Mr. Pandey.